Hello there. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to create buildings on any angle that you like. So I have some examples here. I'll be making use of Photoshop. So these are just sort of quick and dirty examples. You can tell the shadow is kind of sloppy right there. Alright, so to start off with, I'm just going to go over some elements or some basics to do with perspective. So when we're looking down at the map in RPG Maker, we're basically seeing things at a 45-degree angle. That's not necessarily the only option available. So probably the first thing to consider is what angle is the camera at? So in your normal situation here, when you're seeing a building in RPG Maker, it will look something like this. You'll see a building, a door, a roof, and it's not really very clear what perspective it's in. But if we try to draw a cube, for example, perhaps something like this, and we go to rotate it 45 degrees, we get something like this. This would be a 45-degree rotation. Or sorry, it would be a 45-degree rotation, but also this would be what it would look like if the camera was at 45 degrees above. Another option down here, if we're seeing more of the top of the object and less of the side, this might be something like 66 degrees. Or if we're going to see less of the top and more of the side of an object, that might be something more like 22 degrees or 26 degrees. So the first thing to do is to figure out just what angle you want to set your camera at. Personally, I like something around this view here. Somewhere between 20 and 30 degrees, I think looks really nice. By default, I think RPG Maker probably corresponds to something between 30 and 45 degrees. Alright, so now I'm going to talk about just working with simple ratios. So if you go to draw a cube here, you'll see this ratio of 2 to 1. And this is going to correspond to about 22 degrees. Alright, so let me just sketch in a few examples here. The important thing to do is keep these lines parallel. So if we stick with that same ratio as before, and I think I actually elongated the bottom part a little bit too much in this example. It probably shouldn't look as tall as it is. The proper name for this would be Trimetric Projection. So this idea of thinking about things in terms of a simple ratio is a good place to start. It can be very helpful in trying to plot out some more unusual shapes in your map when you have strange arbitrary angles going on or objects that aren't quite easily figured out. So this L shape here, for example. Alright, now if we were to look at the way it's done in RPG Maker, usually it's something like a 45-degree angle. So it's actually a very simple ratio, just 1 to 1. So here are a few squares to start off with. Now here's where the real challenge comes, the real point of confusion that a lot of people can run into. Let's say you're drawing a wall or the side of a house at some arbitrary angle. And then you go to draw the other side of the building. And you're wondering, well, wait a second, what angle am I supposed to be drawing this line at? It doesn't feel intuitive, or it doesn't seem immediately obvious where this line should be going, what angle it should be. So I've got a straightforward solution to this. So let's say you've worked out the angle of the camera that you want. Let's say we're using a 2 to 3 ratio. So we're seeing slightly more of the side of an object than the top, which I think this is a pretty good ratio to use. What you want to do is create an oval that has those same dimensions, 3 wide and 2 tall. And you'll want to put a dot right in the center. And you're going to use this as a template. So now, whenever you have 2 parallel lines at any angle at all, you can very easily figure out what the corresponding angle of the line that intersects it should be for your chosen projection. So you just overlay that guide, and you make sure that dot is right in the center between the parallel lines, and then you connect the tangents. So let me do another example up here with some different lines. Just shrink this guide down a bit, center the dot, and connect the tangents. And this will give you a perfect square matched up to the projection that you have, or the camera angle that you've chosen. Let me just fix the angle here. This should be more vertical. Alright, so let's see this more practically used to actually create a building. Let me just quickly create a wall here. Let's put a roof on it. So this might be the normal sort of building you'd see in a map. So I want to work out the footprint of the building overall. So let's imagine that it goes back this far. So now I'm just going to eyeball the drawing over to the right as far as putting it into perspective. But what you should do if you're trying to work this out is draw the first line, or draw 2 lines in parallel for the angle you want the building to be, and then overlay your guide to match up where the intersecting lines are going to be. And that way you'll have it exactly correct. Right here I'm just eyeballing it though. Just going to estimate where I think the roof starts there. Alright, so now I'm going to copy those walls I created and distort them into position now that I've got that very rough template drawing in there. And I'll do the same thing for the other face here. And the same thing for the roof. It's just matching it up to the rectangles in the drawing. Definitely want to be very careful to keep all the lines parallel here. So that's a pretty rough shell of what the building should look like. At this point it would be easier to just continue working on it without any drawing underneath. So these angles here are more or less the same. I think they are actually slightly different. That's pretty hard to tell. They look more or less the same. It's pretty much equal. So that actually corresponds to something more like a dimetric projection. So let me try a third building down here. I'll try a more acute angle. And again, I'm just eyeballing this in perspective. But really you should start off with some parallel lines and overlay that guide image to make sure you've got everything exactly at the right angle. And same thing as before, just going to distort the walls into position just to match up with the rectangles. And the result of all of this texture warping here, the walls are going to look kind of weird, kind of flat, maybe a bit anti-aliased in some kind of unflattering ways. But it provides a good shell to work off of. So just finishing up the roof here. It's a bit tricky to keep things in perspective here. I gotta make sure all of these lines are parallel. I think I screwed it up a little bit, but it's pretty close. I'll see if I can fix that a little bit here, just after the fact. So yeah, if I zoom in on one of these buildings here, you'll notice there's all sorts of problems going on, things that really just don't quite look right. So at this point, you sort of build on top of the shell, you add some embellishments to make it look proper around the edges, thicken up different shapes and that sort of thing. I'll just draw in a few shadows here. And that's pretty much it for this video. I hope this was helpful, and thank you very much for watching.